John, should you loan people or give people money? So, how much? One of our most popular episodes is on the legal parts of giving people money, but I want to talk about should you and how should you do it effectively. Hi, I'm Bridget Sullivan Ramel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shear. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. And before we talk about the practical logistics of gifting or giving money, I want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and by you subscribing, it helps us get there and also helps other people find this on YouTube. And with that, let's dig into, one of our most popular episodes was about like logistically, how do we give, how do we, set up the giving or loaning of money in particular. But then the other idea, I really love this topic on, okay, yeah, there's a way that you can do it. That's what we talked about before. Should you do it and how should you think about it, right? That's a whole different topic.
Right, because you want to balance your own budgeting and interests with the other person, right? And so this is it's a very interesting little dance that you want to do here. So I just recently heard this suggestion about how much that I want to put out there first. Okay. And so this said, if if you want to loan people money, first figure out your own spending plan to some degree anyway. So I save 10% of my income, if not more. If you want to save more, that's fine. And then I have this other amount for the I've got my credit cards paid off. So those would be two things that uh, you would want to be doing before you start loaning people money. And then so you're in good management of your own finances. Those are two signs to me that you're managing your finances. All right. And then you start thinking, okay, well, what am I spending money on? Can I afford it, etc. And this suggestion was, I have a bucket. I'm a little buckety, and I have a bucket where I save for my travel, and I have a bucket where I save for cars. These are expenses that I are larger, and it's nice for me if I just put money towards them every month. And I actually personally on this put the money in myself because it makes me feel good to think, okay, here's my travel, here's my travel money this month. Here's my car money this month. And so then if I was going to do this, I'd create a third bucket, which would be open to lending to people.
Yeah.
And so then if somebody comes to me, I can say, well, what's in this bucket? Okay, that's how much I should do or could do.
Yeah. Almost like saving up for it sort of a thing, right? I mean,
Right. And putting it in your budget, if that's, and making it part of your plan. Because if you've got decent financial skills, and then you want to make sure that you're maintaining your decent skills and you're not um, sacrificing them for someone else who doesn't have the skills or ability.
yeah. Yeah. No, I really appreciate. I call it the envelope theory because that's how my family used to save money. In an envelope for vacations and an envelope for the new car, for your Christmas account, all those sorts of things, right? So same sort of deal as if you have that envelope, then how you described it, you never have to worry about over giving to somebody, right?
Right.
Or extending yourself. You take care of yourself first, kind of like when you're in the airplane, they talk about the oxygen mask, put your mask on first sort of thing, right? Because if you're in tough financial situations, or if you get yourself in that spot, then you can't help anybody else, right? Um, how do you think about when or advise clients on when you talk about how much? So that's a great way of saying, listen, here's what I have available. Then what's available, do you break that down into if there's one person that needs help, then you say that all that could go to one person, or do you look to say part of that goes? I mean, I would suspect that it has more to do with, who might be on that list for you, right? If you've got adult children that might need some help, or parents on the other side of things that might need some help. Is that how you think of it, or how do you give advice on that?
Yeah, that's what I would say is look at your relationships with the person and also maybe the person's track record. And are you
Mhm.
trying to uh, accomplish anything with this loan or gift? So, it's interesting that I find myself, using the word loan and gift very interchangeably because I think if you loan people money that are your friends and family, you should kind of have this gift attached. This might end up being a gift.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really a really important part, and I know we talked about it last time, but this idea of, yep, I mean, and hopefully it all works out, but the reality is mentally being prepared for I'm giving this money. Hopefully I get it back, but I don't know what the chances are, but I suspect it's not 100% that you're going to get it back, right?
If you do get the money back, you should put it back in that account, I would say, you
Yeah.
know, in that bucket. So the other thing is that I think a lot of times people are trying to accomplish something, either uh, so they might be loaning somebody money so that they can do a specific thing so that um, their situation will be better. So generally, loan somebody money so they can go on vacation, but you might loan somebody money so that their business, like, so they can put that into their business,
Yeah.
something like that. And so I would say, why are you doing this? And what are you trying to accomplish? Again, ideally, what you'd like is for this other person to get those skills, those two basic skills that I was talking about at the beginning. I say 10% of my income, and I don't have credit card balances. Okay. So how does this loan fit into those goals for this person? All right. And there's some people that, you could try. They're never going to get that goal. They're never going to be able to do that I don't, yeah, for whatever reasons. And so I think that you want to put it in that context. And so with kids, again, it's like, okay, well, they're saving their income. Do they have credit card bills? Okay. And then what? Now you're trying to give them some money, maybe so that they can put a down payment on their house, which your grandkids are going to enjoy, and that, et cetera. Well, and they could do it faster than if they waited, and they're going to inherit this money anyway, all these other things. Well, that's a different situation than they ask me for money and they're really just not managing their finances well.
Right, right.
For
And then I
money.
wonder, do you put some parameters around things when you start to save in this bucket or envelope and to think about what is that really for? And it's really challenging, as I'm thinking about on the parental side and thinking about how clients we've dealt with when adult children in particular need help, right? I mean, you want to help, and at the same time, you have to be careful, I think, not to hurt them by continually bailing them out of things that can be self-solving problems or that you can figure out, right? Like we had a client and the son's car broke down and it was, I mean, several $100, $1,000 fix, which was super inconvenient. But the reality is there's public transportation where he lives. There's places like you could get around without that and save up that money. Right. And so how do you balance that as that, and again, I really love this idea of, well, how much can I afford to give? Because we've had folks where they, are hurting themselves by giving to kids, and the kids actually have legitimate needs. But if you can say, listen, can you set it up so that this is all that I have, right? Here is the framework. And, that can be really hard to stick to sometimes, but I think that that's a really healthy way to look at it from a, taking care of yourself first standpoint. But then how do you think about those gifts or those loans that you might make to somebody? Is it when the car needs new tires and you just didn't plan for it, but there's other places, right? If you can't get to work because you don't have the car because you have to drive for a living, what sales or whatever it is, that's one thing. If it's, hey, it's really inconvenient for me to ride my bike to work in the winter, well, that could be another thing as far as how you think about that. And I think it's really helpful for folks to think about those things in advance before the car breaks down and I'm, and I think I might be in a position where I'd be asked for money. How are you going to plan to do that? Right? What's my approach? And then I think it's helpful if you practice that because it's hard to say no, right? When you want to help people, especially family members. And the more you can practice, well, here's my tough line in the sand, the more you can stick somewhat closer to that, even if it's not a hard line, you know?
Right. Well, I think another issue that came up in the other episode that I heard from a client was I want to make sure they're actually asking me because
Yeah.
sometimes people just want to vent and it's poor me. And I don't even think that they're intending for you to think I should help them.
Yeah.
If you do, they would be surprised and probably take it, but they're not really thinking you should solve that problem.
Yeah.
So I actually think that sometimes a no with let's figure out how to solve this problem some other way is might be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap things up on our giving and gifting to family concept. Again, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan Ramel. I've got a family financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both taking clients and work with people all over the country. But if you're looking for a local advisor in your area, we're both members of ACP or the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, and you can find out who's in your area at acplanners.org.
And don't forget, hit that subscribe button.